I'm going to kick off this video before we get into the installation steps a little bit backwards, because I know most of you all have probably come to the video to see what the light kit looks like once it's installed. So I have all the lights turned off, the car's ready to go. So there you go. That is our Paragoptics Ambient Lighting Kit. And like I said, or like I say later on in this video, this is the red kit and this is the installation on the base truck. But again, just wanted to show you all what the kit looks like once it's fully installed. So you got lights here on the dash, on both sides of the radio, and then you got the glove box, you got your doors, all of that in the rear as well as red footlights. Now the white balance might be thrown off a little bit since I'm filming this on a GoPro, but again, before we dive into all the installation steps and you sit through 45 plus minutes of install steps, I did want to show you what everything looks like as far as the final product. But with that said, let's dive back into the heart of the video, and that is how to install this kit in your truck. Hey guys, WATERFOWLER41 here, and in today's video we're going to be installing the Paragoptics Ambient Lighting Retrofit base kit on my 2020 Ram Rebel. So my Ram truck came from the factory without any sort of ambient lighting. Some of the Laramies and Limiteds come with the factory ambient lighting, so they got some dash accents, some door accents. My truck has none of that. This kit is everything you need to install that in your Ram truck, and this is basically the OEM kit on steroids. So this is going to give you brighter light, and it's also going to give you different colors. So I went with red. I think you can get blue and a few other color options, but in this video we're going to be walking through step by step everything you need to do to install this kit in the truck, especially in an application where you have no ambient lighting whatsoever. So my truck has the round, they were halogen from the factory, the round footwell lights in the front footwell areas. That's how you know that this is the kit for your truck. Slightly intimidating at first, but let me walk you through what all comes in the kit and kind of explain where everything goes. It's pretty straightforward once you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at here. So you have all your wiring harnesses here, and then you have your LEDs, your control modules, and your fiber optics up on top, as well as your glass fiber rods for the dash here. Let's ignore this top row right now, and we'll focus on just this path here. So you have your driver side and passenger side main body harness. These are probably the most important wiring harnesses to be installed in your truck to make all of this stuff work. So basically what this does is it allows you to grab the signal from the factory interior lighting control and then move that signal around to everything you need. So it is going to be that body module or body harness is going to go from here. It's going to send the signal into the door. It's going to send the signal into the back for the rear footwells. It's going to send the signal there, and then up in the dash and everything. It's going to move that signal around. So you have a driver side one and a passenger side harness, and we're going to walk through how you install both of those. They have pins and everything, so you will be adding additional pins to both the threshold or both the door jamb on the front and the rear, because you want to make sure that the light or the signal is getting to both of those. So this is what goes inside the cab of the truck. Then when you get into the door, this is what takes the signal from the door jamb and then moves it into the jumper for the rest of the lights inside the door panel. Okay, so we have this one. It's going to plug into the existing controls on the truck, as well as some of your dash plugs for the LEDs. You have your door side. This is going to take the signal from the door jamb into the rest of the door panel, and then these are your jumpers. And these are going to move the light signal from the main jumper harness between the door jamb, getting it to all your fiber optics and your LEDs and let's say the handle area, the mat pocket, and everything. Then we have our power distribution module. You have one for the passenger side, one for the driver side. They look completely different. And then you have all your LEDs. These are all going to snap into place once you open up the door panels or get the footwell lighting pulled down. Everything is going to snap into place because these are all built to factory standards. So should be straightforward once we get to that part. What's not so straightforward is the running of the wiring harness, and that's why we're going to bite this off in chunks. But again, we're going to install the main body harness. Then we're going to move into these jumper harnesses, which is going to take the signal from the door jamb into the actual door itself. Then we're going to open up the door, and we're going to install these jumper harnesses. Then once we have the door panel open, we're going to install our door handles and our pocket LEDs. And then we're going to drop in these fiber optics, which tuck right into this area of the door. So that's going to give us some pretty slick ambient lighting. And like I said, I did red because I have a Ram Rebel, and it's going to look nice with the the red interior in here. So let's get everything cleaned up and we'll dive into the installation. All right, so I went ahead and finished up the passenger side. So we're gonna walk through step by step how to do the installation on the driver's side. The steps are gonna be exactly the same as the passenger side. So again, I'm gonna try to film every step by step process here. That way it's abundantly clear where all of these pieces go, because there's a lot of pieces here, but it's super clean. And once you get all the door panels off, it kind of makes sense, but I'll walk through the routing and everything of that sort. So we're going to do the front door, we're going to do the rear door, and then we're going to do the dash in this portion of the video. And again, step by step here. So as far as diving in and preparing everything, or I guess opening everything up, here is what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is remove this panel underneath the dash. We're going to need to open that guy up. We're going to remove this door sill, and then we're going to go through and remove this door panel as well as the rear door panel. And since we need to run wires from the front of the truck to the back of the truck, we're going to remove this door sill, and then we're going to remove the B-pillar trim panel. So let's dive right into that and start removing all the panels. All right, when it comes to removing the door panels on the Ram, it's super simple, but you do need to be careful where you're pulling. So first thing you're going to need to do is take a jeweler's screwdriver, pop it in this little access hole down here, and you're going to need to pull off this panel, and then there's a second panel right here. Once you do that, you're going to expose two 10 millimeter bolts here, a 10 millimeter bolt here, undo those 10 millimeter bolts, and then you're ready to pull the whole door panel off. Be very careful and do not pull right here. There's basically a welded seam between the top and the bottom portion of the panel, and you will break that if you start pulling the door from here. So what I like to do is wear some sort of grippy glove and start up here. So if you start pulling from where the window edge is, that's the best spot to start there. Start here and then basically work your way all the way around the door and finish up on this side. By the time you get here, everything else will be easy to pop off. Then you're going to need to unplug the switch panel here, remove this cable, and then make sure that your lock is out of the way, and then the whole door panel itself will pop off. Okay, now that we have the front door interior panel removed, and if you saw, I went ahead and just removed the window switch, I guess, control module. That way it made it easier to unplug it, but you could probably unplug it with this guy still in place. It just pops right out. So we have our locking mechanism here, we have the cable for the door handle, and then we have the wire harness for the switch and lock panel. Now we need to repeat that with this panel, same thing. There's a access panel here that will give you access to a 10 millimeter bolt. Then there's another one down here, two more 10 millimeter bolts. Same thing, grab from the top, pull this bad boy off, avoid pulling from this corner right here. So we're gonna start this way, we're gonna work our way all the way down, and then this door panel should come off. Then we're gonna lay them face down, because then we can start adding the LEDs to the door panel. And that's probably where we're gonna start. All right, let me give you a little tip here when you're removing the door handle cables, because these guys can be kind of tricky. You're going to see it looks like an arrow there. So if you have a pair of needle nose pliers and you pinch that, it'll be easier to remove it from the little plastic tangs or plastic clips that it clips into. So if you use the needle nose pliers and clip onto the top and bottom of this bad boy and just push it straight back, then it'll pop out a little holder, and then you can undo the cable pretty easily. So we have our rear door panel removed and ready to go as well. Infinity references looking good. So we're gonna start with installing the LEDs on the door. So I'm gonna start with installing the LEDs and then running that jumper cable and basically preparing our door panels so that when we do have the wires ready to go for the this little section here, we'll work on that next, then everything's good to go. So we're gonna focus on the door panels for right now, and then we'll dig into the rest of the truck. So let me get everything situated, and we'll start with the front door, and then I'll show you the rear. And again, everything I'm going to show you on the door panels is replicated on the passenger side, so it's the exact same process. So let's dive into that. All right, so this is the rear of our front door panel, and we're going to be installing 3 LED assemblies on there. The first one is going to be our door handle LED. It's going to clip into these little tangs there, and I'll show you in a minute. The second one is going to install, and it's the middle mat pocket. It's going to install right about here. And then the third LED is going to install all along this track right here. So let's start with that top guy, then we'll go to the middle map one, and then we'll go to that filament. So the top door assembly are these guys, and you can see it's just a little plastic clip with an LED built into it, and that guy just clips right into the top of the door handle assembly. Then we're gonna focus on, where is our middle map? Then we have our middle map guys. These guys have a little screw on there. It's a Torx T20 bit. This is gonna screw in right here, and that's what gives you that ambient lighting inside the door handle, or I'm sorry, inside that lower map pocket area. And then we will go ahead and finish up with installing the big fiber optic, which follows this little trail right here, and it clips into all these sections. Then there's a screw that attaches and it holds it in there, and then we'll finish up this door panel with running the jumper wires. So let's get everything situated, and I'll show you how everything clips in. All right, so we have our first LED, and again, this is the door handle LED module that you get 4 of these in the kit. They all look the same, and they all install the exact same way. So we want to make sure that that LED is facing straight down. There's a blank side, and then there's a side with the LED. LED is going to face straight down, and then we're just going to basically line that up in there. There you go. Then it installs right in place, and it cinches down really nicely. A little difficult to do one-handed, but there you go. Cannot screw this up because it only fits in one way. So now we have our plug. Remember that, because that's where that plug is going to go in the future. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our middle map pocket LED, and this bad boy is going to install right here. So this comes with a screw that you're going to basically attach right here. So we take our LED, and again, we want to make sure our LED is facing the little hole. So there's a hole on the inside here. Pops right into there, like that. And then that's it. And then we just take our screw and install it right there. Okay, so we have our middle map pocket LED installed. It's a Torx T20 bit. Super simple. Don't over tighten it. This is all plastic. No worries. No need to make it Hulk strength. Then I went ahead and started the filament for the lower map pocket. The LED itself is going to be on the far side of the door. So it's basically going to be on the outboard side of the door, and it comes with a screw that we're going to attach it to right here. But ultimately what we're going to want to do is feed this guy all the way in there, and we're going to go back on the other side and attach everything. But once you feed everything in there, you see the LED itself lines up nicely with this little mounting hole. So it comes with a screw here. We're going to use this screw and drop it in right there, and then we're going to go on the other side and we're going to drop that LED filament into this entire channel. So let's do it. All right, we got our door panel flipped over, and we are ready to start seating this filament into place. And you can see it fits nicely right up into this channel here. It's gonna take 2 hands, because what you wanna do is make sure it's pressed right up into the little holders here. There's holders every couple of inches, maybe every 1.5 inches. And you wanna make sure that the filament itself is sitting nice and flat inside there and is nice and concealed. You also wanna make sure that you're doing the filament from the left side and working your way towards this little small side here, because you wanna make sure that when you get to this turn, the filament is tucked up nicely. If you start from this end, you might end up with the filament popped out and it'll look like crap. So we're gonna start over here. We're gonna slowly push this up into place, and you can monitor how good you're doing by looking at the back. And these little holes right there, that's where you're gonna see the filament. You wanna see a nice consistent exposure of that filament, because that's where the light's gonna shine through for the ambient lighting in that lower map pocket. So let me go ahead and put the camera down and pop that guy into place, and then we're good to go to run the cable on the back of here, and then our front door panel is prepped. Super simple, but we're gonna start easy and work our way to the difficult stuff. All right, once you have all your LEDs situated where they need to go, so we have our handle one up there, we have our middle map pocket LED here, and then we have our lower map pocket filament completely installed and pushed up into place. We have our screw ready to go. Next thing you want to do is grab the driver's side front door ambient lighting jumper. And basically what this is, it's a jumper. It's going to go from one light to the next one to the next one to the next one, and then it's going to end up on this side, I believe, and that's where it's going to plug into that second smaller harness. So this is what the harness or the jumper looks like. Everything is labeled. So the way I do this is I basically plug everything in, and then there's all these push tabs, and those will line up with existing holes, and that's where you're going to pop them in. But go ahead and plug everything in first, and then you can route the wire how you need to do it. So let me get everything situated, and then we'll review the routing path. I've heard that if you have a big horn, so I have a Rebel, I don't need to do this, but if you have a big horn where you're installing this kit on, you might need to drill some holes, and I'll point you to Paragoptics video because they show you where you need to drill those holes. But I will also have a repository of all the pictures of the backs of these doors so you know where the cable goes, and you can reference that when you're installing your own kit. Okay, so we have our lighting jumper installed. So let's walk through the path starting from this lower map pocket because that might be the easiest. So again, everything is labeled. So if you start with plugging in your map pocket LED plug, that guy goes here. You run everything up here, then you have an existing hole that you pop one of those push pins in. Take a little turn here, you pop another push pin in because there's another existing hole here. And that's where you meet up with that middle map pocket. So you plug in the middle map pocket, and we know it's the right one because it was labeled appropriately. That Y then is going to come up, another existing hole right here, right by the top of the middle map pocket. You're going to pop that push pin in there, pop another push pin, another one, another one. Like I said, they did their homework when they were designing this harness. Then the harness is going to Y. It's going to Y off to the top of the door handle. Plug that guy in there. You're going to push the push pin up here. You got another push pin right here. And then you have your input harness. So this is where the signal is coming into the door and goes down to all those LEDs. But with that said, now the front door is done and we can work on the rear passenger door. Same exact thing. We're going to put a film in here, one in the middle, one in the top, run the exact same cable, and then we're going to be good with our door cables. Okay, so now that I have the cabling run on both doors, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all these little tags off. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm a stickler for any sort of noises, and I feel like if I have that flapping in there, it's going to drive me nuts, and if I hear a noise, I'm going to think it's that. So while I have the door open, I'm just going to pull all those tags off. But both our doors are now prepped and ready to go, so we could just set those off to the side, and now let's start diving into installing the other end of this cable. So basically how the body is going to move the signal from the body of the truck into the door. So let's get these guys put out of the way carefully and dive into the door jambs, the tricky part. Okay, now that I have my interior door panel ready to go, I need to run the wire that goes from this little spot right here into the door jamb into our B-pillar connection plug, or plug in there, whatever that plug is called. In order to do that cleanly, I need to remove this panel. There is a trick to removing this panel, and that is removing the weather seal or weather stripping. That way you can get your fingers in around the panel and pull straight that way. So take your seat, move it as far forward as you can, and then take this panel and pull it straight back. Bunch of clips are basically right down here, and they're pretty hard clips, so you're gonna need some muscle. But basically what I'll do is I'll put my fingers in here, pull from the top, and just slowly work my way down and pop this guy off. So you're gonna need to remove this panel, and you might as well remove this guy because you're going to ultimately be running a wire from the front of the truck through there that will come up here. So let's just get this guy out of the way. Again, grab up here, remove the weather stripping on both sides. So I have the driver's side door as well as the rear driver's side door stripping removed. And this stuff, it just pushes right back on when you're done. So it's really easy to remove. Fingers in there, pull that bad boy out. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to remove this connector because we need to repin this side and we need to repin that side of the connection. The reason I started in the rear of the truck versus the front is because I wanted to show you how easy it is to remove these guys so that when you get to the front where it's a little bit trickier and there's not much room to manipulate things, you have a better idea of how to remove this because you remove these the exact same way you remove the fronts. So basically there's two clips on the bottom. Let's see here. There's two clips 2 clips on the bottom, and then there's 1 clip on the top that you're going to need to depress. So the first thing we're going to do is depress the 2 clips on the bottom. So right underneath that's the bottom of that clip. We're going to depress those, and then we're going to reach up on top of that, press that one, and then once we do that, that whole connection comes out this way, and then we could disconnect the 2 pieces once we have it out of the vehicle. But again, there's 2 clips on the bottom, 1 on the top, and that's how you push the clip or this whole connection piece towards the exterior of the vehicle. So let's do that, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about once I get this guy out. Okay, so there's the plug. It's out. So again, you have to depress these 2 little clips here. This is the bottom of the clip, and then this is the top of it, and there's a metal clip on top. Oh, sorry. There's a black plastic big clip up on top, and you push this guy, and the whole thing pops straight out. So the next thing we're gonna do is unplug this little connector from the harness, and we're gonna work on sending our ABL cable through this little grommet thing into the truck. It's gonna attach right here. And then we're gonna work on repinning this side eventually, but let's just get this door finished up so that we can get the door panel put back on and clean up everything here. So let me get that guy pulled apart. Let me get the speaker pulled out, and I'll start showing you how we're gonna connect that ABL harness. Okay, so we have our cable ready to go. We know it's the right cable because it says body to ABL jumper, rear door. So you see this little oblong plastic clip there? That's what pops into this hole. So we know the wire is gonna start here. So what I'm gonna do is take this wire, I'm gonna fish it through this little gasket right here. That will put it behind this inner door skin, and then I'm gonna run that wire all along this main harness. I'm gonna cut this electric tape so I could open up this gasket, and then I will show you how we are gonna take these 2, and what are they, males? These 2 male terminals, run it through this gasket, and then we're gonna add them to open pins inside this connector. That way we have points where the power is now gonna come into that main door harness. But again, we're gonna slide this guy through this little door gasket here. It's ultimately gonna plug in here. We're gonna run the cable all alongside this main harness, clip off some of this electric tape, and then run the wire through this guy, repin here, and then we'll pick up some of the slack, and then we'll situate everything with zip ties and electric tape. So let's get that electric tape clipped off of there. Let's get this guy at least threaded through this little plastic or this little rubber grommet. All you need to do is just pop a little hole with scissors, pull it through there, and then we can start working on fishing it into there. And then I will show you how you prepare this clip here for adding extra pins there, because you need to unlock it by removing those gray tabs inside. Okay, so we have our body to ABL jumper cable installed here. Ultimately, it's going to connect right about there, but everything's loosely in place. It's popped through our gasket here. We ran it through the speaker hole so we could start to align it with this gasket. The other thing I did is I pulled the rubber gasket off of this little white plastic trim piece. That trim piece is there to hold the gasket to the plastic plug. Once you open that up, now that gives you access to run wires through this little rubber gasket. There is a trick to doing this that makes it a heck of a lot easier. And it comes in the way of hard plastic reusable straws. So what we're gonna do is push this guy carefully through here so we don't hit any of the wires, so that this gives us a little channel to then slide these 2 wires through, because we want to slide these through without damaging those end pins, because those end pins need to stay as straight as possible, because we are going to fill in 2 empty positions inside this plug, but we don't want to damage them by trying to shove them through here. So what I'm going to do is thread this straw into this little rubber gasket carefully. That way I have a little channel, I can slide those wires through, and then we're good to go. All right, so we have our straw inserted, and I went ahead and pulled the wires through that. So now all we got to do is pull that straw out. You don't need that much wire pulled through the straw, because it really, all it needs to do is land in here, and then you're going to pull the rest of the excess back into the door. So now that we got everything run through there carefully, everything's in one piece here, we could pull that straw out, and then we could finish up with pinning this guy. So then I will show you how to remove this little gray tab, which is the internal piece there, and that will allow you to push these 2 terminals into the back of the connector to fill in 2 open positions, so that we have our plug ready to go and pinned for our ambient lighting. So let's get that straw pulled out of here, and then I will use a jeweler screwdriver, so this flathead screwdriver, and I'll carefully pry up on the tab here, and then on the tab on the other side. That way that internal gray clip there pops out. Be really careful, but ultimately that's like a locking mechanism for all the wires and pins in here. So we're going to pop that guy out. We're going to push our pins in there, and then we're going to put that gray clip back in place so it locks everything in place. Okay, so we went ahead and removed that little plastic clip that's inside, and all you need to do is basically just take your flathead screwdriver, get it up underneath this tab, and push it out carefully. You got to do that on both sides. It'll ultimately shoot out. Keep that because you're going to reinstall that once you have the new pins in there. So now the next thing we need to do is locate 2 empty pin slots. So in this plug right now, the top left 1, 2, 3 openings, or the top 3 pin positions are open. So we have 2 pins that we need to find a home for. Couple things. One, you have 2 colors here. It doesn't matter which one goes in what hole, as long as you remember, because you're going to need to do the opposite when you do the body side of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the black wire, because this is what I did on the other side, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to carefully push it into that hole. And if you do it correctly, you will hear a light little click once it gets into place. I almost forgot. Last thing you want to do is make sure that this lock is reinstalled. So it's going to be the reverse of that guy. So it'll be vertical like this, and then we'll just carefully push it into place. There you go. Now you know it's fully seated. You can check your terminals, make sure everything is good to go. But the plug looks good. The rubber gasket's fully around that white little clip thing. This guy is good. So we're going to pop him back in the door. Get that. Let's see. Pull this guy up out of here. We're then going to take this wire. I'm going to electric tape everything back together here. Zip tie things so everything's held in place nicely. And then we're good with this door. Okay, so I went ahead and cleaned up everything. So we have our harness inserted back through the main hole there. We have the gasket pulled through. We use this little tab here to pull everything, make sure it's nice and seated. We're going to double check. We have our lock in place, and then this gasket is fully seated around that white clip. So we're good to go on that guy. Then we're checking our plug here, because remember previously when we pulled this guy out, we had to undo this clip. That clip is back into place. That means all the wires are pulled off to the side, so we're good there. Then our wire pops out here. I took the excess and I ran it down here, zip tied it here, and then there was that oblong hole right about here, and that is where that plug pops right into. Again, it's a nice factory look because these are factory components and these are built to factory specs. So now the next thing we're going to do is we can install the door panel back on here because everything is good to go and everything's situated here. So again, the main reason I wanted to focus on the rear door is because it's a lot easier to access this guy from the rear. And if you have a little bit of practice at this now, when you get into the tricky situation with doing the front ones, you at least know where you're pressing. So you're pressing those 2 clips on the bottom and the one big one on top. So now you know what the game plan is. We're going to go do it on the front. All right, so I have my speaker reinstalled. The wires are good to go. The last thing I want to show you, reversing or reinstalling the door skin is exactly the same, except now you have this extra plug here. You need to make sure that that extra plug from the ABL cable that you installed for the LEDs plugs into that guy. So when we install this door skin back on the door, plug in here, plug in your switch, plug in your door handle, make sure you get your locking mechanism situated into place, and then you can pop everything back on. And then we are done with this side of the door. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, don't forget to plug this guy in. And just for good keeping, we're going to make sure we remove those tabs because we don't need those on there anymore. All right, now that we have our rear door finished up, got the door skin on, still have that plug hanging loose because we didn't pin the body side of everything, we're going to turn our attention to the front door. So it's going to get a little bit more complicated from here on out, but again, same situation or same steps on this side are exactly what I did over on the passenger side. So we need to install that same ABL harness in our front driver's side door, which means we need to remove the door jamb plug. This one's a little bit trickier to get to because unlike the B-pillar where we were able to kind of reach our hand behind there after we pulled that trim piece off, we got to reach our hand up underneath the dash. So we're going to remove this trim piece because we're going to need to remove this anyway. And then we're going to work on snaking our hand up in there and popping this guy out. Again, that's why I had us focus on the rear first so you can get some practice at removing this. Remember, it's 2 clips on the bottom and then 1 main clip up on the top. So the clips on the bottom are on each side of the bottom of the clip, and then you have that 1 main one up at the top. So we're going to need to snake our hand up underneath or behind the dash to carefully pop this guy out. And again, just like the rear one, it's going to pop out towards the exterior of the vehicle. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled off this trim panel. The easiest way to do that is pull from the bottom, and it basically just hinges off. There's clips all along the edge here, but as long as you can get some leverage on the bottom, you can start working your way up. Unfortunately, it did not free up too much access for us, so that sucks, but we'll figure this out. So the next thing we're going to do is we need to remove this little piece of weather stripping here. It's very simple to undo. It's basically just taking a trim tool and getting underneath each of these clips. They're very easy to pop off, but the reason you need to remove that is because you need to get access to this guy and free up the room next to it. This gives you a little bit more freedom to move things around once you get in there. But like I said, once we do this, the rest of the project is very straightforward. This is just going to take some swearing, some sweat, maybe some blood. I'm sure I'm going to cut my hand on some of the sheet metal underneath there, but we'll get it. So let's dive into it. We got it. All right, so here is the trick. There is a little plate. Let's get the light down there and I'll show you. Sorry for the angle. There is a little plate, this guy right here. And what I did is I unbolted him. That way I could lift it up just a little bit so I could squeeze my hand in here. And basically, once you reach your hand up in there, that is how you will access the back side of that plug, so you can get at those bottom two clips and then the top one. Surprisingly, the top one was very easy to get. The bottom two were a little tricky because every time I got one side, the other side wanted to click back into place. But we're good to go. We got them. So now we can undo both this white and the brown connector, so we can pull this connector completely out of there so it's not just dangling in place. And then we can focus on the door, adding our ABL cable, pinning the female side of everything here. And then we can focus on installing the main body harness and repinning the top portion of this guy. All right, so we went ahead and removed those two connectors from our main harness here, so we're good to go. Now we could start working on running the wire to pin this bad boy. Just like the rear passenger door, so let me give you an orientation. This is the top right of the front door. We're gonna remove this little white piece of tape, and what that'll give us is that oblong little opening, and that's where the front of our plug plugs in. So our plug is going to plug in just like that. This is our ABL harness. We're going to run this wire through this little gasket here. We're going to pull this gasket off, and that will allow us to chase the main door harness, which is this, all the way into the harness here. So again, similar to what we did in the rear, we're going to pop this guy off and try to back this guy out so we can work with it. We're going to use our straw to run the wire through here, and then we're going to pin this connector. And then we will start focusing on closing this up and then the body harness. Okay, so I have my ABL wire through the harness. It's run through the boot here and it's pulled out. It's ready to go to be pinned. Unlike the rear where you pinned into the white harness, on this side, there's only enough room on the brown harness to add the pins. So again, it doesn't matter what position you use, as long as the positions you're planning on using on the inboard side align with this one. Draw it out if that helps you. But if you look at the brown harness, not on the top row, but on the second row, there's two empty positions that will fit the wire when it comes out of the body harness. And that's what I'm going to do. And I went ahead and confirmed that those two positions are also open over here. I did find a lot of positions that either didn't have a wire here and had a pin here, or had a pin here, or had no wire here, but there's a wire inside the harness. So all that said, what I'm going to do is take the second row on this brown harness, and those are the two positions I'm going to use. I cannot stress this enough. Once you pin these things, it is next to impossible to get the pins out without damaging a lot of stuff. So pay attention to what you're doing, take your time, and pin it accordingly. So I have my wire run. Remember, it's going to land right here. It's popped through the silicone gasket. I pulled the whole harness out of here, so I'm going to focus on pinning this guy, cleaning that up, get him pulled back through the door, and then we can start working on the body harness side. Okay, so my driver's side door is completely wired. So here is the plug for that ABL connector. So my door panel LED ambient jumper is going to plug into here. That wire runs this way, pops through the harness here, travels down with that main harness into here, and then it is pinned in the bottom connector, in the brown connector, and it is the second row of small pins, and it's the two pins on the, let's say, towards the two pins towards the front of the vehicle, so that when they plug in, they will be next to, let's see, there's a purple wire down here that they're going to be next to. Where's that? The orientation's all messed up. It'll be next to, yeah, it'll be right next to that purple wire right there. Okay, before we go any farther, I want to dissect the main body harness for the driver's side because there's a lot going on here, and I think I could demystify it a little bit. So I split it up into three parts. The first part is your under dash section. So this is going to plug into your little power distribution control panel. This is going to plug into your new footwell light. And then this is going to plug into your left side dash light, and this is where you're going to grab the power for the harness. So all of this is in the general area of the footwell. Then you get to, let's see, these two. These two wires are going to run across the truck into the passenger side because you're going to plug these in on the opposite side of the radio. So that is that side. Then you have your dash right. So this is going to grab another LED on the way to the passenger side. So we have our dash LED / passenger side. We have our under dash section. And then we have the two yellow cables that are going to tie into our door. So we're going to connect these two first. And then this whole wad of wires is going to go towards the rear of the truck, because in that wire is first your footwell lights for the rear, which are going to go underneath the driver's side seat. And then it is also the wires that need to go up the B pillar and connect to the other side of the wires here. So I don't know specifically where a couple of these will land, but I know everything is cut to fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosely run the wires that I know where they go to the location where they're going to go, and maybe, you know, loosely tie them in with some zip ties, and then start figuring out where the rest of these go. We're not going to dive into the dash just yet. What I'm really focused on is making sure everything underneath the dash, so all these power distribution and control panels and everything, as well as this wire, are tied in somewhere. So we're going to figure that out. But again, ultimately, we know these two yellow wires on the driver's side are going to tie into the door jamb. So I'll probably start there, and that will let me start to land all these. And again, we have some push tabs, so we know to be looking for some pre-drilled holes so we could pop these guys in there. Same thing goes for the part that goes underneath the seat. So this is what's going to go into your footwell light that's going to go underneath the driver's side seat. And then ultimately, this is what runs along the door sill and goes up the B pillar. All right, brief update as far as the harness. So I did a couple things. One, I took that posi tap as well as the dash LED left and ran it to where I know those are going to go, because that dash LED left is going to go right here. So if I know and if I know that plug is going to go here, and I know ultimately we're going to be pulling power from this general area, I'm going to go ahead and zip tie these guys up there, because that will help me figure out what I need to do with the rest of those. The other thing I did is I took the rear footwell light as well as the rear door power and ran them this way. So the rear footwell light, right now I just have it coiled up on top of the seat, but it's run through this little channel. Ultimately, that's going to pop through underneath the seat, so then I can run the wire to the back footwell light that attaches to the bottom of the seat. That's very easy. I'll do that in a little bit. Then I took the rest of that wire and I ran it through this little channel here. So here's the two little terminals. And I don't have lighting back here, but you can see I then took that wire and ran it up here, and ultimately it's pulled out of here. So these are the rear door driver side. So these are the power terminals that I'm going to drop into this plug. So again, I'm going to add them to the plug so they can mate with this guy. Then I could close up everything here. So that side's easy. Very straightforward. I know where those go. I know where these go. Now I just have a bunch of plugs down here. I know this is going to go into the power control module, because that's what it says here. And then these are going to slowly tie in with other LEDs throughout the truck, ultimately making it that way. So I'm going to start this way and make my way over there. One thing I did end up doing is I pulled out one of the LEDs for here. So you got two of these. One's going to go right here. The other one's going to go right over on the other side. And I'm going to plug this guy in. It should snap right in. There's a little housing mechanism right here. I removed the vent, but ultimately this LED is going to drop in just like that right behind here. So I'm going to drop that guy in there, plug him in, zip tie this guy up out of the way, so then I can start pulling the rest of the wires. It's a little complicated. Definitely watch the labels, because that will help you land these things in the right spot. So let me keep going with this. Okay, so I'm about as far as I could go on the dash side before I start pulling the radio out. I got pretty much everything in. I got that front LED here. I got my power set up over here. Again, I'm missing a wire, so I'm not sure what I got to hook that up to. Got to give Paragoptics a call. I have my power control module plugged in here loosely. So again, I'm about as far as I could go there. So what I'm going to do now is close up the doors, which means I got to repin the body side of these harnesses. So I have my wire run all the way through here. This is for the rear door. Again, this is what's going to give me the power into the door, and I need to repin this guy. So the first thing I'm going to do is use a little flathead or my nail to pull this little lock off. So you got to pull this white lock off the plug, and then we got to remember where we put our powers in this side. So we got the white and black there. The black is on the far outside, and then the white is on the second one in. So then we'll do the same thing here. We'll put the black on the outside and then put the white on the second one in. So again, let's remove that white little locking tab here. Then we just take our wires and insert them into the back end of this so they clip into place. And then we could close up everything here. And we're going to repeat that for the front door as well. Okay, so I have my doors good to go. I got both harnesses put back together. Again, I'm trying to get as much done before starting to dig into the rest of the stereo, just so I can get everything cleaned up and put back together. So the last thing we got to do before we put all the sill plates back together is run our footwell light for the rear seats, which the light itself attaches to the bottom of the driver's side seat as well as the passenger side seat. There's two little holes underneath the seat that you just push the little LED into place. So what we need to do is we need to locate this little channel right here. We're going to take a piece of wire, run it, and we basically want to pop up this wire through this little carpet access, and then it's going to connect up underneath the seat, and it's going to travel to the back of the seat, and that's where it's going to plug into the LED. But yeah, we'll take this, run it up through that carpet access, and then I will route it back to the rear of the seat, and then we'll take that little LED module, plug the wire into it, and then pop it in underneath the seat, and I'll show you where it connects. Okay, so we are looking at the rear of the driver's seat. These are my WATERFOWLER seat covers. I took the rear footwell light wire and I ran it underneath the seat, zip tied it up to a few spots. I made sure that the seat could go up and down and clear it. So now we have our LED here. We're gonna plug it into here, and then right about here, there is a plastic clip that these two little prongs just pop right up into. So you have a small one and a big one that helps you orient the LED in the right direction. Super simple. So we're gonna plug it in, pop it up on there, and then we're good to go. Then we can reinstall all our trim here, reinstall all our trim here, and then the legwork on running the most wires is done. And then we could just focus on the dash, which I think is gonna be a little bit easier as I'm starting to get kind of a rhyme or reason as to where things go. Okay, now that I have the truck mostly put back together, still kind of working in this area, but the sill plates, this stuff's all, I gotta reinstall that. Let's focus back down here because I want to talk about one other thing that I'm gonna do before I start pulling the radio out, and that is install the footwell LED. So this one's pretty simple. That panel that we removed initially to get access to all this area has a cutout, and you just basically take your LED and it snaps right up into place. So that LED is installed. There is a plug up here somewhere right here. This little plug right here goes into that LED. We already installed our control module thing. The factory LED or the factory light plug goes into that control module, and this is basically what tells everything to turn on. It's like a relay, so we need to still get power using that guy. But this is one of the relays. There's another one on the other side. Again, these all just basically fall right into place once you get that harness into place. So we have our power distribution block installed. We have the factory light plug plugged into it. We have the body control harness plugged into that. So right now we still have the LED one loose. We'll put that one on once we get this little panel back up into place. And then this is just my OBD plug that pops back into the panel as well. Now what we're left with is our our dash right side plug, and then we are left with our glove box plug. So this is that LED filament that goes right above the glove box over there. And then we have this bad boy, and I'm not quite sure what this plugs into, but we'll see where it goes. But it says passenger side PDM. So there's another one of these guys on the other side. I suspect maybe this plugs into that, but we shall see. But the next thing we need to do now is pull off the dash. So I'm going to pull off the dash. I'm also going to put that vent back in because I don't think we need that off anymore. I'm going to leave this open until I can figure out what this guy is going. But let's get the two screws on top of that radio out, and then we'll give that radio a good yank, and it should pop right out, which would give us access to where this LED goes in, which is the one right above my TRX button. Let's do it. Okay, so I have the radio pulled out enough. There's about 1,000 plugs behind this thing, so I didn't want to unplug it all the way. With just myself, it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I unplugged a few of them to give me enough slack, and then I just dropped the towel down on my dash so I can move it out of the way. That's all the room you really need, because you basically just need access to right above here to slip in that small little LED, and then you need access above the glove compartment from the side, which we have it with that. So the next thing we're going to do is come back down here. I apologize, I'm all over the place, but I'm kind of learning as I go here. Okay, so this is the portion of the cable or the harness that needs to start going that way in the dash. You know you're doing the right thing because this thing will pop into a bracket. So here's your duct, here's your fuse box. If you look up here, you got a curvy piece of metal, and right above this little bend right here, there is a hole, and that's where this pops into. That way it starts to pull your harness up and out of the way. So I am going to take this side of the harness and pull it towards the opening where the radio just opened up, so we can plug this guy into that LED that goes over the switch, and then I will pop this little mushroom fir tree looking thing into that hole, so that holds our wiring harness up out of the way, and then we'll start making our way towards the passenger side. So let's do that, and then we'll come back and try to address some of this mess here, because again, I'm still not 100% positive where this guy lands. So hopefully by the time we get everything else in place, that will pull it to the general direction. I feel like it should go somewhere over here. I'm just not confident in it yet. So, all right, well, let's get this guy pressed up into that metal bracket and get the rest of the wires pulled that way. And then what we'll do is we will hop up over here, and it's going to be impossible to videotape it, or film it. So I'll just show you it. So we have our LED here. It's the same one that went above this piece, and it basically mounts behind the dash like that. There's a little prong right in the middle. We're going to line that prong or that little pin with the top of this LED. We're going to plug it in first, and then we're just going to pop it right into its little cradle. That way it lights up right here. Okay, I got my LED placed in there, got the rest of the wires run over there, which is basically two plugs. One is the light pipe for above the glove box. The other is that terminal that goes to the passenger side power distribution block, I think. But I did figure out where the driver's side one goes, and it basically clips on top of the LED that you install. The footwell LED just slides right up on top. So now I am left with 3 plugs over here. 4. That's my OBD. That's going to pop right into that terminal. I have my factory light plug. This is going to go into the control module. This gray plug also going to go into the control module. And then this red and black plug is going to go into the new LED that I just installed. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of keeping things cleaned up here, is I'm going to go ahead and plug all 4 of these things into where they need to go on here and reinstall this panel. That way we could then hop over to the passenger side, start pulling those wires the rest of the way, and move the light over there so we can see everything. And then hopefully get this guy reinstalled. Then tomorrow I'll give Paragoptics a call and figure out where I'm supposed to land this guy, because I think this is the magic maker. This is the power that turns on both that control module and the one over on that side, which then tells everything else, hey, time to light it up. All right, so we have our glove box LED wire run over here. I have that random passenger side power control wire over here just for now, just up and out of the way. And that last LED we need to install is this light pipe. And this light pipe basically goes, if you pull down the top here, it's going to clip into this little channel here. Now there's a flat edge to this and then a rounded side of it. I'm not quite sure what side goes in there. I'm going to take a look at things from the side. But once you get the filament in place, then you could go ahead and pop the LED onto the side of it, and that LED, just like the LED over there, is going to sit, and there's a little prong right here that it's going to attach to, so that way you know it's in the right location. So I'm going to go ahead and monkey around with this, but basically what you're going to do is take that filament and slide it up from the front here really carefully and just pop it right up into place. All right, it is a new day and we have our light pipe installed. So a couple tips on installing this guy. First of all, separate the LED from the light pipe. So the LED is that little blue module. You see it right here. It's installed now. But separate that from the pipe itself. Then you're going to work on installing the pipe first. So ultimately what you want to do is make sure that little 1/4 inch tab is on the right side of the glove box. you're going to pop this guy open part way, and then you're going to reach up underneath here, and there's 3 sections of clips, like one big clip, another big clip, another big clip, that light pipe is going to fit into. And then towards this side, there's a little gap in the plastic that 1/4-inch tab will fit into. So you got to feel up there. You really can't see anything up there, but ultimately what you're going to want is that tab to be pointing towards the front of the truck, because that's where that opening is at, and that will ensure that it's aligned appropriately. Then after you get that guy put up into place, you're going to take the blue LED that was on the end of it, and that's right here, and it's going to push. So basically you're going to install it this way, so the LED is going to be kind of cocked towards the front of the truck, and then once it's popped onto the light pipe, you're going to twist it up so it clips into its little spot. Very similar to the LEDs that are up over the start button and over on the other side of the dash. They just clip into a little spot right inside here. So we are good to go with that guy. Then I went ahead and did the wiring while I was at it. So we ran, here's the 2 wires that came from the main harness. So that one wire will go up, I believe it cuts underneath here, and it plugs into our glove compartment LED. And then that second wire is that one that's going to need to plug into the PDM controller, which is down below in the footwell on the passenger side. So both of those lights will cut through behind the stereo. That one will terminate right about here into the LED, and then the other one I used a stiff piece of wire and just dropped it straight down. Let me turn the light back on. Might be able to see it. Yeah, it's right about here. So I ran that wire straight down here. Again, these things are all cut to length, so try to make the most direct route to where you're trying to get it, and you're trying to get it into the gray connector down here, and we'll focus on that in a second. But once you do that, all the work you're doing behind the stereo is done, and you can close up shop here. So with that said, we are done with the radio section. So I'm going to go ahead and get this guy plugged all back in and then pop right back into place. That way it's up out of the way and I don't have it leaning here like that. But again, the reason I didn't completely remove it is there's about 1,000 wires plugged on the back of this guy. And I really didn't want to monkey around with it. You don't need that much room. You're just working with right here and right there. So pretty simple. All right, focusing back in now on the passenger footwell side. So just a brief overview, because I know I didn't cover this install too in depth because you're doing the exact same thing on the driver's side. But this panel needs to be removed. It's 3 push pins. Once you pop that down, this is how you're going to get access to install your new footwell LED. You may have to cut the opening open. I had to cut the opening, but there are lines to do that. And then you're going to put your passenger side control module into this little plug, and again, it only fits one way onto that plug. So then you're going to take the plug for your factory light, that's going to plug into that control module, and then you have the gray plug from the passenger side harness that comes in the Paragoptics kit. This ultimately is going to plug into this guy. However, before we do that, we need to tie this controller to the other controller, which then is also tied to the power. So that power that we're going to hook up in a little bit is going to tell both of these controllers when to turn on. And these controllers are what's controlling everything else. So all of the doors, everything in as far as LEDs and footwells. So this is where all the magic happens, basically like a router or like a gateway, not a gateway, like a router for everything or a repeater. Signal comes in here, and then this sends signal out into everything and tells it when to turn on and what to do. So we need to take this wire here, and we need to drop it into one of the pins on this harness, this gray harness, specifically position number 14. So there's 2 rows. The top of the clip is the portion where it has the tang, and there's 2 rows. There's 7 on top, 7 on bottom. We are going to plug this into number 14, which is the bottom right opening. I need to figure out exactly what orientation we need to get on this guy before we pop it in there. But just like with the door jambs, we need to unlock this guy before we drop any pins in there. So using a flathead jeweler screwdriver, I carefully pried the red tab up. It doesn't come off on this plug, it just pops up. That way you could push things in there, and then when you're done, you push this back in and it'll lock everything in place. So again, there's your passenger side control module, there's your passenger side LED footwell lighting. All this stuff is new. Our factory halogen fit right into this opening. But in order to fit all this stuff, you need to remove that guy because you don't need the plug anymore. And the wire that used to go into the incandescent or the halogen one will plug now into the controller. So this little plug right here is going to tell everything when to turn on, and then this little guy is responsible for telling everything else on. Sorry to repeat myself, but I just want to make sure that that was clear. So buttoned up everything on the passenger side. I ran that wire across and it's dropped into the gray harness. It's plugged into the power control module. Now we need to focus on the last piece, and that's the driver's side positive wire. So previously during the install, I said that this wire needs to tap into a white with green stripe wire. And I said, uh-oh, we don't have it coming out of the top of this plug. I sort of lied. I was right. The wire doesn't come out of the top of this, but we do have a white with green on the bottom of the plug. So it terminates in the bottom of the plug, which is where we need to then tie this guy into. So I'm going to clip the zip tie, which I had there just to hold it in place. Probably pull off a few things here. That way I could get better access to it. And then we're going to take this posi tap and we're going to find that white with green stripe and attach this to it. So I'm going to pull out the vent again and probably pull this piece off just so I could get access in there. It's kind of tight. But the posi taps, I like these because they allow you to work and tap wires in relatively tight locations. So this should be a pretty easy install once I get some access and can get my hands in there. So let's do that. All right, got the vent pulled out, got my light switch pulled out. That way I could get access in here, and I wanted to show you that this is the plug. So that's the same plug from this side. We're just now able to access it a little bit easier. And if you look way down there, you can see the white with green. It's right here. Again, in my truck, I only had the white with green on the bottom of the plug. Some trucks may have it coming out the top. I'm not quite sure what's the difference. But I talked with Paragoptics. They said it's going to give you the same signal. It just depends on the type of truck and what all the truck was equipped with from the factory. So I'm going to use that posi tap to get onto that white with green. Like I said, it's kind of a tight fit, but that's where the posi taps come in. Super helpful there. And then from there, should be able to put everything back, and we should have red light inside our Rebel. All right, we have our posi tap on there. You can see right down there, tight fit. I think I cut my hand on this metal a few times, but everything's good to go. So now what I'm gonna do is put all these pieces back, and then I think at that point we're done. And then once this thing gets some life back into it, because the doors have been open for a while, my ambient lighting should fire up, but we'll see. So let's get everything put back together. Okay, we got everything put back together here, and let's give our light kit, let's get it all fired up. Boom, there it is. Looks awesome. I don't know how the white balance is treating the accent lighting, but one of my main concerns with installing this kit was it might potentially be overwhelming in the inside of the truck, especially if you have tinted windows. Any sort of light on the inside is going to reflect off it, but nope, not an issue at all as far as driving around. The light kit is awesome. It's tastefully illuminated, but it's also not an overwhelming amount where it's blinding you on the inside and it makes it difficult to drive down the road. So we have our door handles here, got our radio on each side, we got the accent lighting, we got our light pipe there, and then all that repeats itself in the rear. We have the door, the middle, and then the lower light kit, as well as the footwell lighting. So you can see the footwell lighting here. Again, not sure how well the camera's picking it up, but this is what the final product looked like. That said, I do have a couple frequently asked questions you all were sending me on Instagram, so I figured let's go through those right now. So, does it change colors? No, it does not. So you buy these kits in the color that you want. I think it's white, blue, red, or green as the kits you can get. Obviously, I went with red because with the Rebel, it accents the interior nicely. How much install time did it take? I think it took between 8 and 10 hours. I kind of lost track there. With filming everything, it does take a little bit longer because you're trying to cover every sort of step. But about 8 or 10 hours is what I would allocate to this project. It was quite lengthy. It's pretty tedious. It's not hard work. It's just very detailed, and you need to keep an eye on everything going through the process. Next question was easy to install, make a video, 20 Rebel owner here. Yeah, so you're watching this video because I made it. And was it easy to install? I think I just addressed this, but it's not difficult in that the concepts and everything that you're doing are hard. It's just tedious. There's a lot of little work, especially if you have the base kit to run all the wiring. So a little tricky on that front, but again, I think it was totally worth it. Let's see, worst part of the install. I would say from my perspective, the worst part of the install is accessing the front door jamb plugs. So the one up behind the glove compartment and the one on the driver's side. I showed you on the driver's side I had to remove that control panel a little bit to get access. My hands are just a little bit too big, but getting access to those was probably the worst part. Outside of that, everything else really downhill from there. Let's see. if it comes with instructions on how to do it or figure out how to do it. If comes with instructions, I'm not quite sure what that question was, but that's why I made this video, because I wanted to make sure that there's a very clear start to finish process on what it looks like installing the base kit. And hopefully between my video and the one that Paragoptics has on their website, that helps supplement your install and gives you all the information you need to install it. So again, that's the brunt of my channel. That's why I make these videos. So hopefully this helps. If you have questions, by all means, leave them in the comments below or email me. Can you keep white lights while doors open and will go ambient with doors closed? I don't know what that... Oh, I think maybe that question is saying, can you keep the factory ambient lighting white, and then when you close it, then it turns to red? And the answer is no, you can't do that, because you're replacing all those LEDs. And right now, this is not a color changing kit. It's just one steady color. So I pulled out... If you had factory LEDs in here, it's white. So you would be pulling all those out and then replacing them with whatever color you get from Paragoptics. So no, you can't change the colors between the two. Any cutting or drilling required for the install? No, with my install on the Rebel, but there is drilling if you have a bighorn, because like I said, when we were doing the interior doors, you do have to drill a couple holes to make sure that you have the access points to push those little fir tree or those little mushroom zip tie connectors in, so it holds the wiring nicely behind the door. And last question, this is a good one to end on. Was it really worth it? I know that's subjective, but it seems like a lot of time and money. It most certainly is. And again, with quality, things come at a price. And this definitely is not a cheap kit. And the install is not something that you can knock out overnight. You can obviously dedicate an entire day to doing it, but I am very happy with how this turned out. And to me, this is my own personal opinion, anytime you could do anything that improves the driver experience, be it, you know, a louder exhaust, better stereo, or in this case, ambient lighting, that to me is worth it, because I drive my truck a lot. I'm in this truck a lot. I want to do things that make the creature comfort experience better. And this, by all means, is one of the perfect upgrades to improve the interior of this truck. It really does make an already nice interior pop by adding really tastefully done ambient lighting in the doors, on the radio, and specifically on the glove box. I find myself kind of staring at the door because it really does look nice in there. I like that nice red afterglow. One question that wasn't asked, but I'm going to answer anyway, is do the lights dim? So yes, they do. So we have the knob here on the side of the headlight knob, and if I move that up and down, you see the lights dim. So if the full blast mode is a little too much for you, you could certainly dim it, and it dims with all your radio knobs. So it's on the same circuit, because remember, we didn't steal, we used the power that was up on the side of the dash here. So again, I realize all of this is at night or in a dark area, but I wanted to show what the ambient lighting looks like. But again, I tried something new here, taking your questions from Instagram. If you have any more questions, leave them down in the comments below. But with that said, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. This is such a fun install. And I've been blogging along the way on Instagram, so hopefully you guys got a kick out of some of the status updates I've been doing. But cheers, and here's to the next one. Take care. Bye.